Most of us already know about Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and how we should be in the present. The real challenge is remembering to become aware in the exact moment we're being carried away by our thoughts and emotions.
Exactly. Like if a thought pops up saying, I'm a failure, the immediate reaction isn't, that's an interesting thought. It's, I am a failure. The thought becomes the identity instantly.
The first two steps in the art of objectification are pause and become aware. They're the foundation of the entire process. If you can't become aware that you've been unconsciously thinking or feeling, the remaining steps don't matter, because in the heat of the moment, you won't remember they even exist.
Hey there.
In this two-part series, I want to lay out what we've called the art of objectification, the ability to transform any thought or feeling into an object of awareness, something separate from the self.
It's less about fighting the feeling and more about changing its very nature within your experience.
Let's lay out why it's important. When you can separate yourself from your internal experiences, you gain greater control over them. Instead of being unconsciously governed by your thoughts and emotions, you can observe them, investigate them, and decide whether they should influence your beliefs or behavior. This applies not only to thoughts and emotions, but also to impulses, desires, cravings, fears, beliefs, and other internal signals. Rather than reacting automatically, you become free to choose how each of these experiences influences your actions, and ultimately, the person you become.
It's a complete paradigm shift. You're moving from being a product of your impulses to being the architect of your own character. It turns the inner world from a series of commands into a set of data points. Do you think most people even realize they're operating on autopilot, or do you think they just assume the autopilot is who they actually are?
I think we assume that whatever thought pops into our head is a description of who we are.
Exactly. Like if a thought pops up saying, I'm a failure, the immediate reaction isn't, that's an interesting thought. It's, I am a failure. The thought becomes the identity instantly. It's like we're reading a script we didn't even write and just assuming it's our autobiography.
The first two steps in the art of objectification are pause and become aware. They're the foundation of the entire process, and that's why this entire first video will be dedicated to them. If you can't become aware that you've been unconsciously thinking or feeling, the remaining steps don't matter, because in the heat of the moment, you won't remember they even exist.
That's the real bottleneck. If the awareness part doesn't trigger in real time, the toolkit just stays in the box.
Most of us already know about Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and how we should be in the present. The real challenge is remembering to become aware in the exact moment we're being carried away by our thoughts and emotions.
Right, because the now is great in theory, but it's a lot harder to find when you're in the middle of a spiral. Since this is the hardest part to actually execute, how are you planning to show people how to bridge that gap between knowing and actually doing it?
I'm going to make this really simple. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is download an app called Random Reminder. It's free, there's no ads, I'm not getting paid for this, I'm not being sponsored by them. I'm using this app because it's a useful app. I'm using the Android version myself, but I'll provide a link to both Android and iPhone versions in the description below.
I love that you're being transparent about the app. It keeps the focus on the utility of the tool rather than some sales pitch.
So once you download and install the app, it's going to ask you to define a reminder. This is the reminder I've been using, and I'll copy and paste this entire text into the description so you can copy and paste it if that's what you want to use for yourself.
That's such a helpful touch. What does your specific reminder say?
The first thing it says is to pause. The purpose of this is to interrupt unconscious automatic thinking and emotional reactivity.
It's like a circuit breaker for the brain. It forces a hard stop right in the middle of whatever spiral or autopilot mode you're in.
The second line says, become aware, and asks, was I caught off guard, lost in thought or emotion? The purpose of this is to allow you to diagnose your current state of mind and identify whether you were caught in unconscious thought.
It's like a mental diagnostic test. Instead of just being in the middle of a feeling, you're suddenly the scientist looking at the feeling. Turns that lost feeling into a data point you can actually use.
Most likely, when you first start seeing these reminders, you'll begin to notice how much of your mental activity happens automatically, and how often you become absorbed in thought without realizing it.
That's a total eye-opener. I think that's the part that really shocks people, realizing that they're essentially passengers in their own heads for a huge chunk of the day. It's one thing to know it theoretically, but seeing it happen in real time because a phone buzzed is a completely different experience.
Next, it says, take a physiological sigh if stressed, anxious, or emotionally overwhelmed. Do you think you can explain what a physiological sigh is?
I can definitely do that. It's basically a double inhale followed by a long exhale. Take a deep breath in through your nose, then right at the top, you sneak in one more tiny, sharp inhale to fully inflate the lungs, especially those little air sacs called alveoli that tend to collapse when we're stressed. Then you let out a long, slow sigh through your mouth. It's like a manual reset button for your heart rate and your nervous system.
Do you think you can simulate the sound?
I can definitely give it a shot. Deep inhale through the nose. A quick, sharp second inhale. And then a long, slow, audible sigh out. How was that? Did it sound like the real deal?
No.
Ouch! Honest feedback, I love it. Clearly, my simulated breathing needs a serious upgrade.
If you're still having trouble understanding exactly what to do, there are plenty of videos online that'll teach you how to do it in about 30 seconds. But the point is, this breathing pattern helps reduce carbon dioxide in the lungs and activates the parasympathetic nervous system, allowing your body to calm down more quickly. Studies show that even a few physiological sighs can reduce stress and improve mood.
It's basically a cheat code for your biology. Instead of trying to think your way out of a feeling, you're just hacking the hardware to force a state of calm. It makes the mental work of objectification so much easier when your heart isn't hammering in your chest.
Exactly. And performing this physical act can also make it easier to step into the present moment. Maybe you don't always remember to pause and become aware, but if you've trained yourself to engage in some physical act whenever you notice you're stressed or anxious, then the sigh itself becomes another cue to pause and become aware.
Exactly. You're building a conditioned response. The sigh stops being just a relaxation trick and starts acting like a signal flare. Eventually, your brain sees the stress and just automatically triggers the sigh, which then triggers the awareness. You're basically installing a shortcut into your own subconscious.
So I included this in the reminder as a quick relaxation method you can use to help regulate your nervous system. For example, if you're stressed or experiencing anxiety or anger, you can use this to come back down to baseline. You may not need to do this every time, but it's a reminder that you have this tool at your disposal. The next part of the notification asks, what thoughts is my mind generating? What sensation is my body producing? And the purpose of this is to help you become aware of the thoughts and bodily sensations occurring within you.
And that's where the object part actually starts to materialize by asking, what is my mind generating instead of what am I thinking? You're creating that tiny but vital gap. You're no longer the thought, you're the observer of the thought. It turns the internal noise into a list of observations.
You're exactly right. This is the first step in separating yourself from your thoughts and emotions. The next line says, I'm training myself to choose, not just react. And the purpose here is to remind you that the whole reason for this process is to make it so habitual that you can step into the present moment whenever you choose. The end goal isn't to become dependent on this app. The app is just the scaffold. The end goal is to internalize this process so that over time, you begin to pause and become aware without needing the reminder at all.
That's the ultimate payoff. You're moving from external prompting to internal mastery.
And the last thing I put in the reminder was practice becoming aware whenever you check the time, or walk through a doorway, or begin scrolling on your phone. You probably do these things a lot throughout the day. If you can associate checking the time, or entering the room, or scrolling on your phone, or some other activity with becoming aware of your inner state, then you are more likely to internalize the process and not need the reminder app.
You're turning the most mundane parts of the day into micro practices. When something as simple as a doorway becomes a trigger for mindfulness, you're basically weaving this skill into the fabric of your life. It makes the transition from using an app to just being aware feel inevitable because the world itself starts reminding you to check in.
Every time this reminder appears, you're practicing the same sequence: pause and become aware. Over time, the goal is for that response to become increasingly automatic, so that eventually you begin to pause and become aware in situations that don't involve the reminder at all.
That's the real magic of it. You're moving the skill from a scheduled event to a real-time capability. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you're obsessing over every single movement, but eventually you just ride and the balance happens in the background.
This repeated practice gradually improves your ability to notice when you've been carried away by your own thoughts and emotions. This is why the reminder specifically asks you, were you caught off guard or lost in thought or emotion?
Because it forces you to actually diagnose the moment. It turns a vague feeling of being stressed into a specific observation of, I was just caught in a loop.
And over time, you're learning to recognize that being lost in thought or emotion is the cue itself.
Exactly. It flips the script. Instead of the lost feeling being the problem, it becomes the signal that it's time to pause. You start treating the drift as the doorbell ringing, telling you it's time to come back to the present.
Exactly. And eventually, you won't need this app at all, especially if you pause and become aware every time you look at your phone or check the time or walk through a doorway. All of those extra reminders are reinforcement, and they better help you to internalize the process of pausing, becoming aware, and entering the present moment. After you enter the notification, there's a couple more settings we can adjust: the days of the week, the time of the day, and the frequency. I'd recommend doing it every day during the hours you're awake. Obviously, you don't want it to wake you up in the middle of the night. I'd also recommend a frequency of 4 to 6 times a day. I think anything more than 6 times a day might become annoying, and you'll want to just turn the notifications off altogether.
Keeping it in that sweet spot of 4 to 6 times makes it a meaningful check-in rather than just another annoying pop-up on the screen.
In closing, if you can master the steps of pausing and becoming aware, all of the other steps will begin to fall into place naturally. Not only will this help you with the art of objectification, but it also allows you to access the present moment and become aware of your thoughts and emotions.
It really is a universal skill. Whether you're using it for objectification or just trying to be more mindful, you're essentially reclaiming the steering wheel. You're no longer just reacting to the world, you're actually present for it.
In the next episode, we'll learn how to transform thoughts and emotions into objects of awareness so they can be examined objectively instead of automatically becoming a part of who we are.
And that's the real pivot. Shifting from this is me to this is something I'm observing is where the actual freedom happens. I'm really looking forward to diving into that part of the process with you.
Do you have any final thoughts or questions for the audience?
I do. I think the biggest takeaway for everyone watching is that the drift isn't a failure, it's just how the brain is wired. The goal isn't to never get lost in thought again, but to get really good at noticing when you have. If you can just catch yourself once or twice today, you've already won. I can't wait to see how people use the reminders to start taking the wheel back.
Thank you, Maya. I think we'll end that here.
I'm looking forward to whenever we get to record part 2 and dive into the actual objectification process.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Talk soon.